Welcome to the Italian Cultural Institute for tonight's presentation. As you know, we've been watching a number of films, actually since December, and what we were trying to do was to look at Italian history through the cinema, which is really a very useful way because the cinema projects the emotions of a country, as you certainly had the opportunity to remark. Tonight we are going to reverse these equations because we have an expert of cinema who will be talking about cinema itself. And the subject, which is of great interest, is indeed Neorealism. So we'll have a cinematic approach to the subject, whereas so far we always try to look at the history that was taking place and somehow got portrayed through the cinema. He teaches at the University of Rome and is visiting professor at the University of Northwestern. We'll give him a round of applause.
History and film are always linked, so you cannot talk about Italian history without talking about Neorealism and vice versa. And still, the Neorealism is the starting point for every discourses on film. If you read Peter Bondanella's Italian film history from the Neorealism up to today, you understand that the Neorealism is still the crucial point to talk about. About the notion of rethinking Neorealism, because Neorealism is something so famous that everybody has dealt with it, but sometimes with some stereotypes. So it's easy to make a little too simple, and I'll try to make you understand, to let you understand my point. Open City is the big explosion of a new art. In 1945, Roberto Rossellini made this film, which was a big shock for international audiences. I mean, Italy was coming from the fascists. For 20 years we had a dictatorship. The people all over the world identified Italy with the fascists, with Mussolini. So in 1945, just after the war, out of the blue, all over the world, they realized that Italy wasn't only Mussolini, it was something different. In Open City you have seen, and if you haven't seen, I'll tell you in a minute, you see the story of a priest who's allied, a Catholic priest who's allied with a communist leader. They are both dying, and they will die for an ideal of liberty. So how come? I mean, wasn't Italy fascist? So this was the main thing, the big shock all over the world. Rossellini shot this film in 1944 during the war. I mean, when the war wasn't over in the North Italy. You know that between 1943 and 1945 there was a long process of liberation of Italy and even a civil war on the North. So while they are still fighting in the North, and there was the so-called resistance, I hope you know, the Italian resistance against the Germans, Rossellini was already shooting a film, which was Open City. So a wonderful film from many points of view, because it's a film about the resistance, so it's a very political film, it's an anti-fascist film, but at the same time for a new kind of artistic message. I mean, not anymore films shot in studio, not anymore Hollywood stars, but a different kind of look, a different kind of interest for society, for the real, although this notion of reality is very ambiguous because you never know what does real mean. According to the recent historical debate, the Neorealist doesn't start in 1945. There is a long process. The debate about reality was already in the fascism. During the fascism, there were many films which, perhaps with an ambiguous ideology, sometimes even talking about fascism itself, but they were interested in a new reality, in treating the real. And one master of this is Alessandro Blasetti. From the Neorealism, all the Italian cinema of the post-war period emerged. I mean, Fellini, for example, on the right, was a collaborator of Rossellini. I mean, the people don't remember that the most surreal director, 8½, Nights of Cabiria, Amarcord. I mean, if you think about Fellini, you think about fantasy director, but he wrote Open City, he wrote Paisan. I mean, the films you have seen were co-written by Fellini. After Generale della Rovere, you cannot talk about neorealism anymore. Generale della Rovere is the last Rossellini's film about the resistance and the war, etc. The Big War is an historical film, but at the same time is the beginning of the so-called commedia all'italiana. After 1959 is the deadline, and the neorealism shifts in something else. The scholars have been talking about the degeneration of, it's a play on words, a degeneration of the generation of neorealism. For example, one realist became the so-called pink neorealism, Neorealismo rosa, so it became, yes, outskirts of Rome, poor people, but you know, comedy, handsome guys, beautiful girls, etc. And it became sort of comedy. The drama, the melodrama, neo-realist, with the famous couple of Amedeo Nazzari and Yvonne Sanson involved in many tens of movies about, you know, jealousy, blood, marriage, birth, bastard, babies, etc., 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 etc. This huge, but I mean, the setting is real, but the film are a little funny and overacted, overemphasized. Neorealism has many models, because again, the neorealism doesn't start from nothing, out of the blue. So, for example, one model is the film noir. The other model is the Western. If you rewatch Peter Rice, it ends like a Western. I mean, there is a duel with guns like a Western and a little bit of gangster. There are some films who really quote or look like a sort of remake of neorealist films. For example, Anche Libero va bene, debut, first film by Kimbrough Stewart, clearly refers to children who are watching us. Fezza Nobset e Cuore Scuro clearly refers to Rossellini's Europe 51, etc., etc. Certi Bambini by the Frazzi brothers refer to the closing scene of Paisan. And to close with a slogan and with a joke, the new generation, this is Gomorrah, this is a famous frame from Gomorrah, kills the fathers or the uncles. This is a perplexed face of Nanni Moretti, an important Italian director of today. So they kill the generation of the fathers and they want to go back to the neo-realism. Just to say that the neo-realism is still there. The corpses of the neo-realist director are still there. We never buried them. Do you recognize something in this frame? So this is Michelangelo's Pietà. So when I in reverse, I mean, instead of the Madonna, there is the priest holding the Madonna. Anna Magnani is the Christ, and Don Pietro is the Virgin Mary. But this is so. I think my idea is clear. So when you think about, in a very simple way, that the neorealism is a realistic picture, talking about real, you know, the question before. If you think that the neorealism is a real picture, like a still picture of Italy at that time, is not true. I mean, there is sort of sublimation. Does it make sense? I mean, you know, a metaphor way, and a metaphoric way, and a very stylish way. Sometimes with quotation like this. I mean, this is not a realistic frame. It's a Pietas. It's a Renaissance. It's a humanist frame. It's Michelangelo's meeting the resistance. So just to say that the Italian neorealism is even much more complex than the tradition says. It's not only a movement inventing like dogma, you know the Dutch dogma is not a sample school. It's something much more universal, and for that reason even more important than a banal reading of that. Thank you. I think we can stop.